my challenge is getting in front of the right fit potential clients.
Yeah, maybe in your 30-second intro, you can spend more time describing the right client, or maybe even better, what if you had a video of the right client thanking you? Would that be possible?
I'd have to potentially, yes.
Okay, just a thought.
I have to develop that further.
All right, Jeannie, I'll respond to you later. Why don't we get started with the class, unless anybody else says anything else? Are we good? All right, just so you know, the book is $27 now on Amazon and Kindle. And still the best way to get it, in my opinion, is the subscription model. And an example of that is today's class. So when somebody subscribes to the book, this video will be with that chapter. So it's a chance for all of you to talk about your businesses and people. You become virtual reality stars, to the people that are going to get it. So just be aware of that also. All right. But this is from chapter 6 of the book. And I don't know if you can see it, but I have the book in my hand and I'm taking it right out of the book. I'm not going to read to you, but I'm going to tell you it's right here. Okay. And this is one of my favorite chapters, and it's selling with questions versus answers. And so part of what we discussed earlier is, why do people buy? Desire, wants, needs. Are those some reasons that people buy? I believe it's fear. So I think that's one of the number one motivators, and it's better known as future pain. So, we eat because we're hungry, but sometimes we also eat because we got a long stretch ahead of us. We don't know when we're going to eat again. That's fear of some type, right? We do a lot of things based on some level of fear, and maybe that's a strong word for a lot of you, but if you boil it down, I think that's where it comes from. It could be a self-centered fear. It could be a survival fear, but it's still fear nonetheless. And future fear is pain. And I think that's really what we want. So no pain, no sale, no pain, no gain. So how do we figure out where pain is? By giving answers? Probably not, right? But by asking questions. So that's where we find pain. Part of what we do by doing this is we change us from being a seller to the prospect being a buyer. The best way I know to do this is by asking questions. Even if you know the answer to certain questions, ask. So when you go to the doctor, right, and you make it into the little room, they know why you're there, but they say, so where does it hurt? What brings you in today? That kind of stuff, right? They want to go through that process with you, and they want you to sort of feel the pain. So, I love asking someone, so what brings you here today? Why are we having this conversation? And the reason why I positioned this class where it is prior to the trade show, I want you to think about those of you that are exhibiting at the trade show. A great first question might be, oh, I'm so glad you came in. With all these booths out there, what brought you into mine today? I'm just curious, right? Start the ball rolling, okay? You guys should probably be taking notes, because at the end of this chapter, you're going to make your own list of questions. So start thinking of questions that would be useful to you. Some useful questions, and I'm just going to rattle a lot of these off that I've come up with, are, and a great one to start a meeting with. So we're at a 10 a.m. meeting. Ask, are we still good to 11 o'clock? Find out the length of your meeting, right? How many of us are great at setting up the time of a meeting, but we never ask how long the meeting's going to be? What if you schedule for an hour and they've scheduled for 15 minutes? Be good to know that, right? So ask. What you'll learn when we go over the sales system is we want to start with softer questions and move on to harder questions, right? Or soft versus hot. So maybe a nice softener would be, so where do you live? Where'd you grow up? Do you have kids? How old are they? Where'd they go to school? Where'd you go to school? One of my favorite, when you've been given a referral, is to say something along the lines, you know, it was so nice of Christina to introduce us. Why do you think she wanted us to meet? Okay. How'd you get into this business? So if I met with Christina, I'd want to know that. If I met with either David, if I met with any of you, I'd want to know that. Karen, you've got to have a fascinating story how you got into that business. You know, we all have a story. They want to tell you theirs. Ask them. Get them talking. By the way, there's a 70-30 rule when you meet with somebody. They should be talking 70% of the time. So you want to lead them with questions. You could ask what they're currently working on, what their passions are, what they're passionate about, what they do. You guys know the term, what's your why? Mm-hmm. Many people in business do. Ask them, what's their why? What's your biggest challenge in business? What have you done to try to fix it? Did it work? Have you given up on trying to fix it? What's it costing you not to fix it? And these are big questions, right? Do you think it'll get better? Anything else you'd like to fix? What have you tried there? Did it work? Keep asking those questions because you're leading them in your direction, right? Especially, you know, you could say, you know, what's your biggest challenge in HR? What have you tried to fix it? Did it work? Have you given up? You're just working around it. So that's, bring them into your world a little bit. Have you ever used a consultant before? Who do you use now? What do you like about them? What don't you like? What could they do better? What does it cost you in time, money, or peace of mind to not fix these problems? Does it keep you up at night? Another scenario could be, what's preventing you from joining? Is that a big enough of an issue to make a changeover? Thinking of like the David Quick world. Maybe they have an IT provider that doesn't return calls for 24 hours. Is that a big enough deal to make a changeover? Here's a big one. Have you thought about how you're going to tell the previous person you're working with that you're going to make the change? Right? How many of you have not closed a deal because the incumbent, you know, the person who currently has them as a client, talked them out of changing? They lowered the price, they stepped up the service, they made a promise. So we need to coach our people on how they're going to let people know that they're going to make this change. One of my favorite questions, and Christina, this is probably going to resonate with you, Karen and David probably very well, is you guys are kind of perfect for us. How would someone like me go about working with a company like yours? Right? And then the next answer would be, well, you would be introduced to so-and-so. And then you could say, are they free now? Do you mind introducing me? Right? So how would I go about working with a company like yours? It's one of my favorites. How do you guys go about deciding on a company like mine? Those of you that have competitors. Who at the company makes decisions? You know, is it just a procurement person? Are they always going to go with the cheapest price? That's a great question. Is it just a bid situation? Do you automatically go with the lowest price? Do you have a budget for something like this? It's another good question. That's another way, instead of you saying, well, I charge $100 an hour, to ask them what their budget is. Nice clothes.
Chris, you know that, you know that question, why did you want to meet or something like that?
Yeah.
I forget exactly. out of this, that I've thought about that question. I'd like it, except that a lot of times I've asked them, right? Someone's introduced me, they felt obligated to talk to me. So, I mean, I think it's a really good question. So I probably that question unless they've approached me. Did my computer go out?
It's all right. I got the gist of what you're saying. So what you're saying is sometimes people meet with you because they feel obligated because somebody made the introduction. But the question is, why did they suggest them? So they're not just suggesting
right.
a random.
So I do like that question of why do you think someone introduced us? I like that.
Right. Why do you think they thought we should meet? You know, have you discussed any personality type situations before with this person?
Yeah.
So once you've got, again, we're turning up the heat a little bit here. So if you wanted to go for a close, you could say something like, how would you like to proceed? Or what would you like to have happen next? Okay, so I'd like you to work on your list of questions and let's role play a little bit and hear what questions you have. And whether they say yes or no, please ask for a referral. So your last question should be something like, do you know someone that could benefit from working with us?
But this is you having is this us having a conversation like me with Karen because she was referred to me for networking, or is this me having a conversation with a prospect?
Well, it's not for networking. It's you being introduced to a prospect.
Yeah, so I'm not going to ask them for a referral when I'm trying to get them to sign on to business with me.
Well, depending on the situation.
And they don't even know me really yet.
Well, I mean? But if they say yes, no, maybe, sideways, you know, it can't hurt if you're having a nice conversation. You decide that at the time. But if I'm meeting with someone, I'm generally going to ask if they know anyone that could benefit. Because they might. You know, they may say, I wish I could work with you, but we have someone internally that we work with, or we're very set with the person that we have. And you can say, that's great. Do you know anybody else that might be interested?
Yep, that makes sense.
You know, now, if you have somebody saying, you know, yeah, this could make sense for us. Let me get you in touch with our blah, 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 you know, our C-suite person. It's more in their world. They've now given you the referral. So yeah, and these people tend to flock together. They know each other. So I wouldn't be afraid, but you have to find it. Listen, anything I tell you, you need to make it to your strength and your conversation. These are just suggestions that I use. A friend of mine, Chip, used to say that it's like concentrated orange juice. You decide how much water you're going to mix in to make it to your liking.
Also, I think one thing I would just always consider who you're talking to, because if you're talking to someone who they really busy, they've like carved out 20 minutes for you or whatever, you're not going to go in there and start asking about, do you have kids? You know, you have to kind of estimate where the person is. However, on another note, if you walk in and they have pictures of their kids all over, then you can probably think that, yes, that might be a good question about the kids.
After the trade show, we're going to get in depth into our sales system, which focuses on an hour-long meeting where you've been referred to this prospect. And it is structured in a way that it can work for all the different personality types. And you will find that in an hour meeting, some personality types, and if you get two of them together, will chit chat for 50 minutes and all of a sudden time's up and neither of them have gone into this. Other personality types might dive into business too fast, you know, and it becomes, you know, so how do we work with you guys? That's not a great start. So I think that there is some softening And
Oh no, I just talking about which questions. So
yeah, pick your own.
Yeah, I'm just saying to decide on which questions is important. You can't just say, okay, today I'm going to use this question.
Yeah, that's right. That's why we have an arsenal of them. That's exactly right. So like Jeannie, who just had an experience going car shopping, I'm sure the guy didn't start with what color do you want it in? You know, he probably started with something like, how are you going to use the car? How many do you need, a 4-door or a 2-door? You know, or is this for work? Or, you know, he probably asked some open-ended questions like that. So let's think of your open-ended questions. So you guys should be writing a list. I'd like to hear them and go through them and see what you would use.
Conversations going. So
Yep.
I normally start by, because the clients find me, whether it's a referral or SEO. So I start by, hey, tell me what's going on. Tell me about your business. So then they just start telling me about their business. And then I start asking probing questions.
Wonderful.
And then, you know, and if they just talk about their business and they don't tell me what's wrong, then I will, because sometimes they'll just go on about their business, which is unusual because most business owners I've found are high Ds. So normally they're kind of to the point. But if they are happening to go on and on, which is unusual, then I'll ask, so why did you reach out to me today?
Yep.
What are you looking for HR? And then they might say, oh, you know, I'm worried about being in compliance. But normally I don't have to do that type of probing. Normally the probing I need to do is to just say, hey, tell me about your business, listen, and then hear kind of what they're saying. And then I'm able to ask, you know, this is what I think would work. Would this work for you? Do you think that would work for you? And it's kind of more like a dance.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll tell you a quick story, and it's probably my favorite story in using this approach. And I'm relentless here. I won't move on from this section of the system until I have some kind of pain. And I met with a guy, this is probably 10 years ago, and he insisted we meet in a diner instead of his office. And we're sitting at a diner at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I probably spent an hour and a half here. So this was an open-ended meeting. He just wanted to talk. And everything was great in his world. And we were talking about the boats he had and his second home and this and that. And he was going on and on. And after about an hour and a half, I finally said to him, you know, normally at this point in a conversation, there would be an indication of some kind of pain, of something that somebody wants fixed. You don't seem to have any of that. You know, why am I here? What are we doing if everything's so great? And then he took off his glasses and his eyes started to tear up. And he slammed his hand down on the diner counter and the silverware jumped. It was very dramatic. And he said, you know, I've had a good living for the last 20 years and we've made the same number every year, but that number isn't worth enough anymore. And I have to let someone go for the first time. And these people are like family to me. And he went on and on and on, and he closed himself. And it was just by asking that one question. And I had to find it. And eventually I just had to call him on it and say, why am I here? If everything's so great, why am I here? So, but you can't start with that. You got to earn your right to get there a little bit. That's why I like starting with do you have kids? Do you live in the area? Where'd you grow up? But you got to find what works for you.
Yeah. I'm with Christina as far as, you know, there's usually some context around why you're there, right? If I'm there because they have a business partner and they're having some issues or trouble, you know, then I kind of know where to start. Tell me about how you got started together or whatever.
Perfect.
Or if I am just meeting my ultimate prospect of like a president with 200 to 800 people, I would just say, tell me about your leadership team. I would just get the conversation started, and then it goes, you know, where it needs to usually.
Now, would you ask a question like, do you think it might be helpful if you knew what the motivators were for each member of your team?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Is there a way of steering the conversation to your wheelhouse kind of thing?
Oh, yeah. And I mean, I do have some other questions that I was putting together while I was listening to yours.
Okay.
You know, like about, are you getting what you need from your employees? Does your leadership team see eye to eye? Do they get along well? Do you have a defined culture? I mean, there's several that I've thought of, but I do like that one. Would it help?
Yeah. Or would it be helpful for your team to understand each other's motivators better? Motivators may not be the right word. I'm trying to not talk here so you guys can write. If someone's ready to go first, they can. Christina, do you have a pre-written out list of questions you might refer to? Do you have Post-its or anything like that?
No, because it's a conversation, like it's a free-flowing conversation. And keep in mind, most of the people I'm dealing with are business owners. Most of them are Ds, and they're all coming to me through referrals or SEOs. I'm not cold calling them. So
no, I understand.
So they're with me for a reason. So it's just really about me listening to them. And hey, tell me about your business. And then they just start, and then I ask probing questions, and to get the information that I need to be able to kind of give them my recommendation, which may or may not be me, right? I just had somebody reach out to me the other day, and they wanted an HR manager full-time to fill in full-time for 3 to 6 months. So I had the conversation with her because I wanted to make sure I understood it. I had the conversation with her and I did understand it. She meant full-time 3 to 6 months. I'm like, honestly, you should hire a temp. I said, we're going to be too expensive for that. It doesn't really make sense. I'm like, I'll do it. I said, but I don't think it makes the most sense. I said, you know, what you might want to do is bring someone in to do the day-to-day HR admin, and our team can oversee the more strategic HR management things, which may only be 10 hours a week. Right. So that's kind of, but I just don't really know until I start in the dance. And then at the end, you know, I'm usually, if I feel like it's a fit, then I'm asking them a fit for both of us. Then I'm talking with them about pricing. And sometimes I'm giving them options. It depends if there's an option to be had. Right. So sometimes I'll say, hey, I can do it retainer, I can do it hourly, or I tend to price this project and then the rest hourly. Then I ask them if they want me to put together a proposal, if they'd like to see a list of people they can contact for referrals. I mean, usually I'm having a 20-minute call, and I'm sending out a proposal on that one call, and then a follow-up call, and then at closing. And I think I'm at about, I mean, I'm just starting to go back and track, but I'm at about a 40% close rate. So it could get better. And it probably has to do with just getting more into my funnel as well.
That all sounds great. So some things that came to mind is a question you might ask them is, do you have any questions? You know, you could say, listen, I've asked you a ton of questions. I apologize. I'm just really curious about you and your business. And, you know, I tend to ask a lot of questions. Do you have any questions about me or mine?
I do. And again, normally keep in mind, most of them are high Ds, they are asking.
Yeah,
you know, most of them are saying like, all right, so now tell me, I told you about my business. Now tell me about you.
Yep.
Or they're saying, you know, so, but yeah, I do ask them that for sure.
So here's another line for you guys. Not that I like having lines, but conversation starters that you can say, you know, typically at this point in the conversation, normally people want to know this. And that's a way to get them to ask you the question that you want to be asked. Right? So David Quick, you could say, you know, typically at this point in the conversation, people like to know how long clients stay with us. And I can tell you that our average client is with us 10 years. So that's a great way of him not saying, you know, our clients are with us 10 years. Or maybe there's a way to say, hey, why do you think our clients are with us 10 years?
Do you think it's helpful to ask how soon they're like looking to make the decision and how often they'd like me to follow up?
Yep. Not just how often, but on what platform, how they'd like you to follow up. Is it a phone call? Is it an email? Is it a text? Do they want to receive your blog?
Because that I don't ask. I just do what I do. And it probably would be helpful to ask, because they might be like, listen, we're 3 months out, chill out. You know what I mean? Follow up.
That's why I like a list. And I know what you're saying with a conversation, but just because you have a list doesn't mean you're not having a conversation. It's just a reminder to say, hey, as a way of keeping in touch, can I add you to my blog? And when would you like me to reach out next? Or something like that. Or would you like to be invited to our next lunch and learn? All right, so I'm not hearing a lot from the Davids and Jeannie. Either of you have a list of questions that you've thought of?
I kind of go with the flow as well, but I will tell you, this is all brand new to me doing this kind of stuff, as you know. I'm like a bull in a china cabinet when it comes to this kind of stuff. So I'm not going to say confused, but I'm just not, I don't know how to wrap my head around what I should be doing. I mean, I do ask questions, don't get me wrong. I do talk about their personal life and all that kind of stuff. But when it comes down to the actual business, that's where I kind of like lose my track. Like I lose the where I should be, I think. And then I become salesy. And then I see the eye glaze over. They look like a deer in the headlights.
Yeah, and their guard goes up and now they're getting scared, right?
Yeah, and then therefore then, you know, what I found has worked for me in the past is that I just push through it, but it's not really working so well with the business that I'm working with now. I mean, it worked well with solar because you wanted solar. That's why I'm there, right? And I have the best price and the best product. So there was no thinking about it, right? I made sure I did that. You know, it worked well with buying and selling a house because either you want it or you don't.
Yeah.
Just, you know, there's no playing with that, right? So an Airbnb, you need a place to stay or you don't. It's
right. But
so
I think that's where
questions
can really help in this area, right? To really understand, oh my God, they're scared to death of their identity. And then you can go for your spiel. But if you're just feeling them out, then you're going to have to do more subtle stuff. Yeah.
And how do I do that? This is not my nature or my way of doing things for the past, I can't even tell you how many years, because then I've given my age away and I don't want to do that either.
Jeannie, maybe a question to them is, hey, is it worth it to you to spend $29 a month to have peace of mind? Just a thought.
Okay.
That's too simple.
That has to be after she's kind of explained what she does. Yeah.
But when they've got that look of a deer in the headlights, because I don't think Jeannie mentions her price often, and maybe they think it's going to cost a lot more than it does.
Yeah.
And would it benefit you to be notified whenever somebody's checking your credit or whenever somebody is in your bank account? You know, I canceled the card this week because I had a weird charge for a penny, but I figured I was like, I'm canceling that card. You know, so I called them up, I had them send me another card because all of a sudden somebody had their hooks into me.
Right. Well, that was a test. Let me just tell you.
Yeah, I know.
You were watching.
So Jeannie, when you meet someone, I would try to maybe change I imagine that you look at everybody as a possible prospect, right? And that look at her, she's going, yeah. But what I might approach, especially people you don't exactly know where they're coming from or whatever, but for some reason they're in front of you. You know, you could just approach it more of, I'm going to build a relationship with this person potentially because they might need one or two or three of the things that I do, right? And so I'm going to start talking to them to see which one I'm going to pitch to them. You know, I don't know that I'm just think. So it's more of learning more about them to figure out what you're going to try to sell them, or they may be just a good person that could give you more leads, right? So there's lots of things that you could approach them with in mind and really ask them for information in order to figure out, okay, where is it that we can work together?
That's actually pretty good, Karen. I appreciate that. Because usually when I'm in a room, I have a purpose. I'm either talking about, I was there invited because of solar, or I was invited because of, you know, you want to sell your house to me or something. There was a reason why I was invited there. And I just kind of stay focused on that.
Yeah. But what's so great is you have such a great personality that people are attracted to you. So if you can just start getting to know them, and I know it's hard because you can't get to know they're going to be there to answer the questions, and they're going to want to talk to you. And so to kind of, it takes a little longer, than what you're used to doing, but it could be really lucrative.
The other thing to keep in mind, Jeannie, is nobody wants to be sold at. Mm-hmm. That's when the guards go up, and that's not what we want. But if you're engaging them and you're asking questions, and they're getting to know you and like you and respect your energy and realize she's just a New Yorker with a lot of energy, and you're passionate about what you do. People like passion, but I think if you're focused on them and their needs and making it about them with your questions and just being curious about them. I mean, the ultimate question for you is, who wouldn't need this? Who wouldn't want this? Mm-hmm. Right? Is there anybody here who would not want her product for $29 a month, to have somebody having your back? And if you do get hit, they're there to put you back together.
It's the first time I heard the price.
But I think that what's so much more to me is she could, from any one person, they could sign up for her ID Shield. They could use her Airbnb. They could look into solar. I mean, if she gets to know them pretty well, she could go a longer way with one client than trying to get to hundreds of clients to spend $29 a month.
Yep.
So let me just say this, because when I have done that slightly in the past, right, brought into my other businesses when I was in there for a purpose, they would be like, oh my God, you do so many things. Like, I'm like, and they don't really grasp it. They actually look at me like, a jack of all trades and a master at none, which is terrible.
That's a really good point. And I totally get that. And I agree. However, what I'm talking about is not in one visit. I'm not talking about in one networking group. I'm saying you go out and you talk to somebody, you go have coffee. Maybe you're talking about one product, but you have coffee again 2 months later, and you're talking, you're building a relationship. Yeah. Okay. I'm not talking about all in the same. Yeah.
Oh yeah, because I've scared the
fuck
out of myself.
Absolutely right. Especially if people think you're an expert in like 5 things, they don't agree. They don't think you're an expert in any of them. So I totally get where you're going. I'm talking about over a period of time.
Which they're wrong, by the way, but we won't go there.
I know.
All right, so the men of this group have become somewhat the wallflowers here. Let's bring David and David out a little bit. Dave Castle, let's hear what kind of questions you would ask someone.
Just being polite and letting everyone have their space. So I don't do a lot of networking. So my introductions to people, the way I'm seeing it, would be through videos and so on, like not necessarily webinars, but showing up for keywords with a video of my services in my neck of the woods. And my questions for people are along the lines of, how do you currently keep new business coming in? And, is it sustainable? Is it really working? When's the last time you got a company that way or a business that way? Is it actually enough business to keep you going? And if it is working, if you have a good close rate that way, do you have a way to scale that up to get more of that type of business that way? Because that's what I can help you with. If you've got a vibrant business and a way to convert people, how do we scale it? Let's talk.
Okay. Works for me. Any comments from anyone? You like those questions for him? All right, Dave Quick, let's hear your questions.
Okay, not a complete list. Let's, are we still good for 1 hour? Tell me a little about your business. How did you get into it? How many people do you have? What was your thought in talking to me today? What is your biggest IT challenge? What do you do for IT support right now? May I ask who you use? I know quite a few of them. I haven't heard of them, but generally I have found most IT professionals are competent. What do you like about them? Are there areas where they could be doing better? Have you reached out to them to address it? Was the issue addressed? If not, what else have you tried? Did it work? What value do you place on the continuing issue? What is it costing you? Is this enough to make a change? Where do you see your business a year from now? 3 years? What do you need from your technology to get you there? Is this enough to make a change? Would you let me know how much you're paying now for IT support? What services are included? What's not included? How will you be basing your decision? Will it be solely on cost, or will it be on other factors? Typically, at this point, clients ask us if they have serviced other clients like them. So I'll just let you know that I have a client, XYZ, that's in a similar industry to yours, that we've serviced many years, blah, blah, blah. Let me know how you'd like to proceed.
All right.
Late, but it's just.
I got to tell you, I think that's pretty good. I don't know if I would go into all of those per se, but there's good ones to grab from. I would also be careful about suggesting that you work within a specific industry. They may not want you in their computers then.
True.
So you may want to find out ahead of time is, would you be comfortable working with an IT company that already works with HR firms? And, for your industry, it may not make a difference, but in Dave Castle's world, it might, where they don't want to share search terms or whatever it is. But, I would want to know that.
Okay.
But you just got to find a way of fine tuning the list. How many questions do you think we can get off in an hour meeting without being obnoxious? 10, 7? What do you guys think? So we got to pick and choose, right, to get them there. We don't want to have a wasted question.
Mm.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect to ask every one of these questions. It depends on where the
And promise me you're not going to read these, right? You're not going to be robotic about it.
No, it's just for me. I would not walk in with these questions in my hand.
And I think we're allowed to have a cheat sheet. In the old days when we used to meet with people in person, a lot of people had portfolios out, right? Those fold up leather things that they'd open and take notes. You can have little stickers or little areas with your next question, your list of questions to pick from. I remember I worked with a company for a while that they had 22 questions they wanted asked. So again, it was a good approach, but I don't know if we're going to get 22 questions off. Unless we preface it by saying, let me ask you a bunch of questions.
But that's the thing. I mean, you may only have one question and they answer all your questions in a monologue that they produce. So it's okay. I think the most important part is that you make it conversational.
Yep. And that you're in control of the meeting, because of that's another issue. So to get to this place where you're asking the questions, you almost have to start the meeting off with quick questions where you've got some control. It's still a conversation and it's still dialogue, but you're really the one asking the questions. Mm-hmm. Because you have a place you want to get to. Right? What you want to know is, what's it costing them to not make a change? Or what's it costing them sticking with their current provider or not addressing the challenge and all of that kind of stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. Any questions for me? Anything else on this topic before we wrap it up?
I just wanted to say one thing that it took me a couple minutes to remember it. What I used to do earlier on was offer people geographic exclusivity. Like we talk about the keyword cannibalizing and stuff like that. So that was part of the close. You want to work with me because I can also work with your competition, and I'll give you what you think is a realistic radius around your business, and I won't work with anybody else in your industry. in that area.
Yeah,
So-
and I think because you're construction, that works, right? And that's what I was going to say based on Christina's comment was a good comment. But the fact that you can work with people all across the country, that, yeah, that would be a way to avoid that, right?
But David, you need to position that as a question. So you're not selling at them. So
Right.
maybe,
No, I get, yeah, I appreciate
so
that.
maybe you could say, so would it make a difference to you if I told you I could offer you an exclusive on certain words within a geographic?
Yeah. I get that. See, I don't think about isolating certain things. My brain goes to throw it all in there. So I appreciate that. So good.
Yeah,
Just
well,
a
we're
couple
trying to be
keywords.
systematized, right? And we're trying to
Yes.
get them to close
Well,
themselves.
and I don't know. That's a good question. Is it exclusive keywords, or is it saying I won't work with anybody else in your industry in this radius?
You know, it could go either way, because literally a letter on the end of a keyword makes a whole new search result. So, you know.
And I also wouldn't offer it up. I'd only offer it up if it's going to be lucrative enough for you.
Yeah, I would be really careful about exclusives.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a better word for it.
Well, and the other thing is, until you are working with a lot of construction companies, this issue isn't an issue.
Right.
You know.
Well, the other thing also is construction companies is a very broad term. And you've got roofers, gutter guys, window guys, door installers, you know, you name it.
Forget it.
Architects.
Yeah.
All right. And I have a feeling, David, that maybe there's a group you could start. You know, my best feeder for me and my business are things like Bang and the trade show. Maybe there's a group you start.
I have the makings of two groups on Facebook right now. One is the Architects of Positive Change in Business, and the other one is the Business Whisperer, because a lot of what I do are a lot of the things that kind of dawn on me are kind of intuitive. So it was recommended to grab that. So.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Before
thanks.
we end, I'd just like to go around the room and give me a rating on the class 1 to 10 for my own knowledge, your aha or your takeaway, and anything we could do to make it better.
I'll give the meeting a 9 for this week, or for this meeting. And my takeaways were asking these questions, because I don't ask enough questions. I just try to, I feed off of questions. I work much better off questions. So they're really important to me. I just don't ask for them.
Anything we could do to make it better?
I think I said it last time, just figure out a way to fill up this coffee cup without me having to leave the room. That'd be great.
That's a great answer. Okay. Anyone else?
I'll give it an 8. And I think something that might make it better is if we did a role play or two.
I was thinking of that and I wanted to, and I'm open to it. We have time. Do you want a role play?
Not necessarily.
Yeah, see that. So that's the thing about.
No, I will do it. Actually, I will.
Yeah, if we set it up as a premise, then we come prepared.
I am
careful what you ask for, Karen.
I know. No, it's true. I would. And the thing is, I do have that meeting at 11:30, so I probably won't do it today.
So when we met live with this class, we did role play and we broke off into groups of 2s. I don't know how to do that on here. I guess we could have breakout rooms, but with such a small group. But I didn't feel that anybody really wanted to be put on the spot on this.
I don't mind being put on the spot. Just for your information, I'll do it.
Me too.
Anytime.
All right, good to know for the future. All right, thank you for that.
But my aha is just reminding myself of asking questions. It's really like, yes, I've talked about this before, and I do need to have very specific questions that I go to, because you never know what situation you're going to be in at any given point.
Are you on a computer or a laptop? Are you on a desktop or a laptop?
I'm on a laptop.
So that goes with you in the office or at home?
Mm-hmm.
What about a little sticky note that could go on the side or somewhere on where you could write down 5 questions that you want to ask?
Yeah, I could do that.
I do that before networking events, and I just make bullet points and I try to put them high on the camera, on the screen somewhere, so that I'm not looking down too much. But if you see me looking off, I'm looking at a list of some type. But, all right, Jeannie, go ahead. What's your aha and your rating and what we could do better?
I would give it a 9 because it reminded me that, you know, I don't need to be doing everything all at one time. Don't be in a rush with a client just to try and get a sale of any sort, right? It also reminded me that, you know, I could be there for a situation of A and quickly turn it into a B just by getting to know them a little bit better and realizing that B may be a better fit for them when it comes to us together. So those are the 2 big takeaways that I took away from this. You know, how could it be better? I think the role play was a great idea. I think that's a fantastic idea because it gets our brain, you know, a little like racing forward a little bit. I like the adrenaline, so I'm good with that.
So being somebody who in the past has represented a number of companies when I had a rep firm, here's where you can get in trouble with what you're suggesting. Close your first deal first before you introduce the second product.
Okay.
All right, because otherwise they get confused, you run out of time, and you leave with nothing and get nothing. So if you're there for solar and you got an ideal fit, they're a good fit for you, you're a good fit for, close that deal. Once you have your contract in place, then say, hey, by the way, who protects your identity? How do you go about that?
All right.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
David,
thank you.
David?
Yes. I would say a 9. My takeaway was not only having these questions, but walking in, not looking to ask every question, just making it conversational, but just having them in my pocket, in my mind, to pull from as the conversation develops. Just be natural. That's in my challenge. So being natural about the conversation.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I mean, you're a sweetheart of a guy, right? And those of us that know you, love you, and think you're wonderful. But at first glance, you can be a little stiff. And a one-to-one with somebody you don't know, I think maybe you get nervous and you fall back on reading it, if you know what I mean. Just know you're a good guy and your intentions are good, your heart is good, and the world needs more people like you. And they'll see that as they get to know you.
Yeah.
Okay. And, you know, they're human too. And the beautiful thing about these platforms is we have people one-to-one. We're not sitting in a Starbucks. We're not in someone's office with all the distractions. Okay.
Can I just say something with that, if that's okay? Because David and I have had a couple of one-to-ones, and I'm finding that the more we talk, the easier it's becoming for us to talk.
Yep.
And so that's huge, you know, because it becomes like last night's conversation was the best conversation you and I have had. And we've had a lot of conversations because it just flowed so naturally because we got comfortable.
Yeah.
So yeah, look at David's smile. David's smiling as you say that, you know, it's nice to see he's lighting up a little bit there.
Yeah, because we had a great conversation yesterday. It was wonderful. And it was just so natural. We didn't have, there was no pretense. There was no agenda. It was just a flow. And so maybe if you just find that flow, you know, it might not be so easy right away, but maybe if you find a flow in the beginning, it'll make a little bit easier for them to relate to you.
And remember, who do people do business with?
People they like.
But it's people they know, like, and trust.
Right.
Right. And who doesn't, if you know David, you would like him and trust him.
Of course. No question.
Everybody here, I know, like, and trust. I would recommend any of you here every time. And that's because we've gotten to know each other. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for attending. Thank you for your time. I hope this was useful to you.
Thank you.
Thanks. See you guys later.
See you later. Dave Quick, I'm available if you need me.
Okay.
Yeah, bye, everybody.
Hey, Chris, are you available tomorrow?
Oh, well, let me reply to your text. I'm going to talk to David Quick first.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, bye.
Okay.
I'll talk to you later. Okay,
right.
bye-bye.
Okay. You want me to You want me to hang on?
Keep forgetting this
Yeah,
is not a
David,
screen.
why don't you call me in the office, David?
Okay, 3 minutes. I just got to go to the bathroom.
Okay.